Welcome to the Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School Leadership Speaker Series. My name is Dr. Cindy Lee and I'm a Senior Learning Facilitator at the Sydney Town Hall campus. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, particularly the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of this place we now call Sydney. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past and present. Our panel today comprises 3 industry experts who play an important role in the hospitality industry, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region. First, we have Simon McGrath, Chief Operating Officer for Accor Pacific. Simon is responsible for over 385 hotels and 53,000 rooms. He is the Director of AAPC Limited, Allegiance, Accor Vacation Club, and the Reef Casino Trust. Simon holds key positions in 2 industry boards, namely Deputy Chairman of Tourism and Transport Forum, as well as Deputy President, Accommodation Association of Australia. Simon is a major advocate in advancing Indigenous employment in hospitality and wider economic employment. He has also taken a lead role in improving gender diversity in the tourism sector. In June 2019, Simon was recognised in the Queen's Birthday Honours List as a member of the Order of Australia for his significant work in promoting Australian tourism on the world stage. Next, we have Peter Tudehope. Peter is an award-winning General Manager of the Radisson Blue Plaza and is celebrating over 10 years with the hotel. On the 1st of January 2009, Peter was also appointed Regional Manager Australia and Pacific of the Radisson Hotel Group Asia Pacific. Prior to joining the Radisson Hotel Group, Peter was the Executive Assistant Manager with the Four Seasons Hotel Sydney and was involved in the pre-opening team for 2 properties, one in Las Vegas, another in Washington. Peter is also Chairman of the Accommodation Board for Tourism Accommodation Australia. In September 2014, Peter was awarded Australasian Hotelier of the Year at the HM Award, among many other industry recognitions received throughout his career. Our third panelist is Rachel Argaman, Chief Operating Officer for Opal Aged Care. Opal currently has 74 aged care residencies with a strong pipeline of 30 more. Rachel holds a strong core belief that companies don't succeed, people do, with a strong knowledge that happiness is based on good health, meaningful work, loving relationships, and a strong sense of community. Rachel's previous roles include Chief Operating Officer at the TFE Hospitality Group, Chief Executive Officer at the TFE Hospitality Group, and Director of Marketing at the Charter Training Group. Hosting our session today is the Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School Associate Dean and Academic Director, Professor Simon Pawson. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. And yes, welcome to another episode of the Leadership Speaker Series. We're coming to you live today from Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School's Town Hall campus. I would also like to especially welcome all of our students who are joining us online today from Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School and more widely Torrens University, Australia, our students who are studying Flight Centre programs, and of course everybody else who may have joined us. For those of you who are new to the Leadership Speaker Series, this is an event that we host every term where we invite a senior hotelier to come and talk to us about all things leadership. This term, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. a lot's happened over the last 3 months. So we have invited 2 senior hoteliers and a leader from healthcare services, collectively making up accommodation providers, to talk to us about how they have fared, how they've survived literally over the last few months, and more importantly, the way forward for them. Now, if you are joining us on Facebook or YouTube, you will have the opportunity to ask our panellists questions. So please put your question in the chat box. We will be monitoring them throughout the discussion, and towards the end of the panel session, we will be asking some of those questions. So, panel, welcome. It is wonderful to have you here this morning. I'd like to start by asking each of you to provide us with an update around how your respective organisations have come through the February-June COVID-19 period. And perhaps we can start with Rachel.
Thank you, Simon, and welcome everybody. It has been a really interesting time. So I would say that the Opal family is stronger and closer for all that we have been through together. And we had an outbreak fairly early on, so the 23rd of March saw us have our first outbreak. And we saw heroes emerging. I mean, some natural anxiety up front, but heroes emerging through that. Our team were just extraordinary. So at the care community where the outbreak happened, initially they do line listing, so they do contact tracing and come up with a line listing. And we lost 40% of our team immediately, who had to go home and self-isolate because of contacts. But everyone just rallied round. We have 39 care homes across New South Wales, so we were able to create our own surge workforce who came and helped us. And we learnt that it's so important to detect and protect, to test absolutely everyone in the home. So in those early days, the thinking was more, you only test symptomatic people. We tested everyone. It was really important that we did so because we found 2 other residents and 3 team members who actually were COVID positive. We were able to send the residents to hospital where they could get the best possible care, and our team members home, and where they were cared for by their GPs. And what that meant is we took the infection out of the home. We then implemented infection control procedures across the home, and the team really rallied round, just communicating at an extraordinary level with families every 1 to 3 days, and really staying close to everyone, close to each other, and learning lots and lots of things that we were then able to apply out across our other care homes. So fortunately we haven't had any other outbreaks at any of the homes. But I would say that we are much stronger for it. And if I can just say, Simon, it's rare to find work more important than what we do. Rare to find work more rewarding than giving that human connection that lies at the heart of human well-being. And rare to find work more heartrending than when people you have grown close to pass away. And we very sadly lost 2 residents to COVID-19 during that outbreak, but we are very proud that we kept 137 residents infection-free and 186 team members infection-free at that home. And I think for all of us across the Opal network, we feel that we are privileged not only to be working through this period, but to be doing such meaningful work, making a difference in people's lives every day.
That's wonderful to hear. And Simon, given the amount of Accor properties in the Pacific region, it must have been challenging for your organisation.
Yeah, look, it was challenging because the business fell away. Yeah, the different reasons for crisis, and the reality was that, you know, very quickly the business was shut down effectively. We went to single-digit occupancies, and that meant that employees were devastated. You know, and we had, you know, whilst we had a whole series of planning and care and a requirement, ultimately, you know, we had a workforce that 80% was stood down. And there was a period of time where it came perilously close to being stood down and placed in Centrelink, which was going to be devastating. So I clearly remember that weekend, and we were talking to government about what were they going to do, and that allowed us to delay a couple of days, and then JobKeeper thankfully came and supported those employees in the business, and I think it's been very well done. But the initial phase was one of closing. The next phase was one of caring for employees, which continues today. The next phase was for those employees that were at work and that we were taking some business back on behalf of government, which is repatriated business, was how do we keep people safe and not expose them? And the industry step up and do what the industry always does. It's such a, from centuries ago, the hotel, it's a centre of community, and we wanted to make sure that continued, and that did so. And now we play a really key role in building the industry again, and building employment, building strategies in marketing, helping government understand that we're not out of this. It's going to be a long road, but a strong bounce back is what we see in tourism. So it's, but ultimately our number one priority has been the care for our employees. Given that we didn't have guests, it's been making sure that their families and themselves are cared for through government subsidies. But we also had a fund ourselves, and we've distributed probably $2.5 million worth of grants in $1,000, $3,000 and $5,000 amounts, and I've probably got another $1.5 million that I want to keep just for the next few months as well. So, it's been nice to be able to have an employee ring in and say, I can't afford rent, or I can't do X, Y, and Z. Interestingly, a lot of those grants went to foreign workers who were on workers' visas, had been with us, have rent, have a car, have kids, but weren't covered by government subsidy. And that's not a criticism of government, it's just a reality. So we're able to do that. So, similar to Rachel, if you've got a strong company going in, I think you come out stronger. I think the gross performance pressure in our wider commercial society sort of, over the last 5 years sort of limited companies from doing what's right. And I think we've been brought back to doing what's right, which I really enjoy, and it plays to our strength.
Thanks, Simon. And Peter, similar for you with Radisson?
Absolutely, Simon. I guess we saw the storm coming when our hotels in China first got closed and went down to single-digit occupancies. Whether we realised the impact was going to be as significant as it was when China happened, I'm not sure. But certainly by March we realised it was on for real, and our hotels started to close, similar to what Simon was saying. We had 3 different styles. You had either closed, you had hotels dealing with quarantine passengers, or you had hotels that were continuing to stay open but running single-digit occupancies. So again, we had to stand down a lot of our staff. Our management teams got their hours reduced dramatically just to try and keep the whole thing going, and we had to really focus on how do we keep our employees engaged during this period, because it was a very, very tough time. There was that uncertainty about was going to be any support from the government financially, and that uncertainty was certainly being experienced in the workplace, and a lot of angst among management teams in the different parts. And certainly one of the things that I really noticed come to the fore was owners of properties really stepped up. And they really showed that they too wanted to get involved in the welfare of the people that worked for them in their properties. And that was a really good sign to see. And we're now sort of planning, how do we come out of this now, and how do we restructure our businesses? And I don't think, in my experience in hotels, and I've been in it for a long time, I've quite experienced what we're dealing with at the moment. And certainly the challenge now, and it's a great challenge, it's almost an exciting challenge of how do you rebuild our industry.
Which is interesting, because we saw in the media, landlords, when it comes to retail premises and so on, were really taking a hard line towards some of their tenants. But it appears in hotels, the owners had a different approach.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing, because again, in my hotel, I've got a landlord situation as well, and dealing with that side of it was quite an interesting challenge as to how do you deal with the rental structure of this organisation, and then the compassionate side of the situation, and understanding again, the business is not in trouble because they're bad business people. The business is in trouble because the government has made decisions to shut it down, and it's the long term, and really getting that message through that it's all about long term is what it's about. And I think once they click into that, they really do understand what they need to do.
So I really want to shift the conversation now from the past to the future, because I'm sure a lot of our students who are listening today are very interested in about, where to from here. So the phrase the new normal, we're seeing that a lot in mainstream media and on social media. In relation to tourism and hospitality and aged care, Rachel, what do you believe the new normal will look like? And do you believe the new normal will accelerate the implementation of some of your strategies, for example, digitalisation? And maybe we can start with Simon.
Yeah, look, I think the new normal can be a bit of a term that is misleading. I mean, people think that fairy dust is going to be scattered and we're going to have this new way of working. I think it's an adaptation, and I think the world in the last decade has adapted fairly well. And there are some jolts to that there's probably increased pace of that. So I probably don't want people to get freaked out by a new normal and sit and wait and pause. But I think there will be a faster increase in terms of the way our work practices, how we work, how we engage, how we communicate. But again, social media has changed that rapidly over the last 5 years. So, but I think that will change. I think the way in which we communicate together will change. I think the currency of cleanliness and health and the ability to manage health, in whatever form that is, I think that will be a valuable commodity. I think a very genuine, authentic approach to business. I think your marketing will need to be very strong in its authentic nature, because I think there's a humility that's beautifully spread across the world now, and I think that's something that's come out of COVID. And I think operating structures, finding leaner, tighter, sort of meaningful operating structures is going to be really important. And again, very good. So all those elements, many of them are in form in the businesses already. COVID has given a different lens and accelerated speed and given a bit of a reason for change. You only ever get great change when there's discomfort, and COVID's created a hell of a lot of discomfort.
Very true, very true. Rachel, aged care and the new normal.
Yes, so it definitely accelerated lots of our strategies. So if we think, for example, we rolled MS Teams out in 3 days. It was going to be a long, structured process. Our IT had already planned it. We were having change managers, all sorts of things. 3 days, everyone was on MS Teams. It was working just fine. And we have a big transformation team and a really large customer experience system, where we've mapped the customer journey and all the phases, discovery, the integrated admissions, etc., and really been looking at a TripAdvisor for aged care and voice of customer and getting that on, etc. And again, big program. Immediate implementation of lots of parts of it. So voice of customer immediately in, so that we could run surveys of our residents and what was important to them through this time and what we should bring back after restricted access first, etc. With our families through this time, how they were feeling, how are we doing in connecting them with their loved ones, etc. And our team, what did they need, what were they doing? We had rolled out, fortunately, our Opal management system, so we were able just to put in policies and procedures really, really quickly for COVID-19. We activated a helpline, which is still running today from 7 a.m. in the morning till 10 p.m. And initially there was this huge spike in people using it because of the anxiety of COVID-19 and everyone having lots and lots of questions. That was really good. But I think, so it really accelerated a lot of things, and a lot of things that we had in play were really good to use. We have a very strong belief at Opal that our purpose is to bring joy to those we care for, and that clinical excellence is foundational, but love, purpose and belonging is really important. And actually, fortuitously, we have 3 conferences a year, our general managers, our care or clinical managers and our lifestyle managers. And our lifestyle coordinators and managers had actually just conferenced at Novotel at Darling Harbour. And 2 weeks before the restrictions came in, they had all been given new iPads, and we had just rolled out augmented reality at all of our homes. So that was very useful, that there was all of those situations and scenarios that residents could enjoy, walking through an autumn forest, you know, fishing, all those sorts of things at that time. And definitely technical connection is something that accelerated through aged care and will stay. So families who visited regularly but who live 30 minutes away, who are now saying goodnight to mum or dad every night, you know, on FaceTime, who have had lots of, you know, iPad connection. And sometimes it's not technology as well. Sometimes it's pen pals. So all the schools programs, kindergarten programs, the year 10 mentoring programs we do with our residents turned into pen pal and online immediately. Window visits, there were so many things that happened. And yet I think what COVID also has taught us is what really matters. And what really matters in life is people. So the simpler things that Simon just referred to, I think really came home to all of us. And again, in aged care and lifestyle, we've typically done really large lifestyle programs, bus trips and, you know, painting and art programs, Tai Chi on the lawn for 50 people. Whereas through this time, we've been doing 5 people or individual one-on-one sessions. We've accelerated our Meaningful Mates program, which is also all about the one-on-one. And I think that's really, you know, the more and more you get to know someone, the more you enhance relationship, and that's what matters.
I think the creativity is just so inspiring around what you've just shared with us, and certainly I can see where the benefit is for some of your residents. It's absolutely wonderful
and
to hear.
Peter talks about challenge. You know, as human beings, I think challenges is part of what we're wired for. We rise to a challenge, we solve challenges, it's part of our DNA. And I think our teams have really loved that. I mean, the pictures through Easter, some of our managers hired cranes and the Easter Bunny came on cranes through everyone's windows, and, you know, just extraordinary things.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Peter, what are your thoughts on the new normal?
Yeah, it's an intriguing term, isn't it, the new normal? I've got no idea what the new normal will be, Simon, to be honest. I guess I look at it 2 ways. I'm glad I'm part of an international company to a certain degree, because if you look at Australia, we've done an amazing job managing COVID-19, and domestically I think what we would deem as normal is perhaps not going to be quite the same when our international market comes back, hopefully sooner rather than later. So we've got to be careful that whatever we're trying to put into place doesn't sort of, as the regulations start to drop away and things change, doesn't sort of drop away to a point when international guests come, they're sort of wondering what we're actually doing to try and protect them and make them feel safe. So for us, it's about being a business-wise, being responsible, making sure that we've got our procedures and our safety processes in place, but it's also about making sure owners are coming with you on the ride to invest in technology that they're going to get a return on. Because no one's going to just go and say, well, this is the new norm, let's buy this and buy that. They're going to sort of say, is it going to be something I'll get a return on the investment on? So it's an evolving concept, in my opinion, the new norm, and what it is ultimately will be very much determined by our customers.
I'd like to talk specifically about our guests, and Rachel, in your case, your residents. For both hospitality and aged care, both high contact services, what are your organisations currently putting in place to reassure consumer confidence? And maybe, Peter, you're on a roll, we'll continue.
Well, I think just about every international management company has joined some external organisation to get accredited for cleaning and sanitisation standards. Most management companies have developed their own cleaning and sanitisation protocols, and then once you've got those in place, it's about physically setting your properties up so that when people arrive, they're basically seeing the government regulations that you've been asked to put in place being put in place, because that's critical. And then it's about marketing. As Simon says, it's about marketing that message that, you know, your well-being and safety is paramount to what we're trying to do here. And that's really what I see as part of what we're trying to do to make people feel comfortable to come back and stay in hotels.
And Simon, confidence for Accor.
Yeah, look, I think it's a really good question today, because it's regardless of how we view it, It's actually how our customers view it. And sentiment is different amongst customers. And the technical expertise of having an internationally accredited safety program is very relevant. It's the foundation for everything we do. And as Peter said, most of the companies have got that in place. Most have external verification. So that's the fundamental structure. But ultimately, that's not a procedural-based issue. That's an education issue. Education for our own team members, education for our guests. And in some ways, whilst you've got the disparity in sentiment, we've got two responsibilities. One, for those that are most sensitive, we've got to protect, we've got to play to that. But I'd like to also hope we play an educational role in that we do help people understand the cleanliness and safety that we deliver, and that might have an influence on wider community. And I think that's going to be very important as well. We want to make sure our team members are confident and equipped. We don't want them to feel like they're at the front line without the artillery that they need. And so again, it's about making sure they feel confident and happy and very proud. And proud not just of our company, proud of Australian tourism. And I think they've got a lot to be proud about. So yeah, it's going to be, it'll be interesting, but it is the fundamental of the new future. And so it should be. I mean, hotels fundamentally have always cared for people. So I think, you know, the elements of health and safety are something that we could have done more of in the past that we're now doing a lot of.
And Rachel, caring is fundamental to aged care.
Yep.
So with your residents and families and confidence, what's Opal doing?
So right from the very beginning in early March, we introduced active screening, temperature checking, asking all the questions about respiratory symptoms, where you've been, who you've been with, etc. We have digital visitor log-ons, and we actively manage and those, wipe them down. We've enhanced all the cleaning that happens. From our residents' perspective, and we obviously look after the most vulnerable cohort because the majority of our residents are over 80 years old. What we do there is we actually are doing observations twice daily and looking for any symptoms. And one of the things that happened very early in the piece in our outbreak was that we did, as I mentioned earlier, test everyone. And at that point, because people were only advocating to test symptomatic people, they said to us, the local health district said, no, we'll just test symptomatic. And we believed that the right thing to do was to test everyone so that we could identify infection. So we have registered nurses at every one of our homes. And at that home that had the outbreak, within 3 hours, we had registered nurses trained on how to do the swabbing, and we had a deal with an external pathology lab. And so if anyone is exhibiting symptoms, we actually get a very quick turnaround on a test so that we can reassure everyone, take the panic out, and everyone can know that their community is safe or that we're taking the appropriate acts. We've also got outbreak management plans at every single one of our care homes, customised for that particular community layout, building design, and we have stress tested them against 3 different scenarios in each case.
Fantastic. I want to change the conversation slightly now to employment, and I'd like to talk specifically around hospitality, and then we'll come to aged care, Rachel.
Plenty of hospitality in aged care.
Well, of course there is, of course. The industry sector has had to endure mass layoffs, with many hospitality workers either unemployed or still waiting to return to the workplace. What is happening around the current growth of employment in hospitality, particularly how long do you think the recovery will be? Simon, if we could start with you.
It's a good question, and it's a question that, you know, all our employees are entitled to have some guidance on. And ultimately, I think, look, first and foremost, it's a very good industry, it's a very relevant industry, and what COVID has shown us is that of all our household budgets, we've stripped back many things, but the first thing I think most families are going to put back in to their household budgets will be tourism and holidays. So I think on a global scale, it entered COVID as a sector that was moving as a tier 1 sector in most developed economies around the world, and that will certainly come out strong. Second part to that is we're in a very strong region in Australia and New Zealand. We've got internationally, we've got about 9 million inbound visits a year, but interestingly, we've got 10 million outbound visits a year. So the strong, healthy Australian and New Zealand traveller In fact, if the international borders are locked down, which we don't favour, but if that happens for a safety reason, we've got a lot of travellers locally that would have otherwise travelled overseas. And I think one of the many good things is we'll finally appreciate the beauty of Australia and New Zealand and the incredible places. So all those trips that everyone wanted to do to Ayers Rock, to Broome, to Margaret River, to Queenstown, to Christchurch, we're seeing an enormous amount of interest in. So strong industry, great region. It's got the best chance of coming out of this and employing, and it moves quickly when it does move and when it spikes. The reality is, through border closures and a wider economic impact that still hasn't hit, I must say. I think from September on we'll start to see the real economic impact on our society. I think for the remainder of 2020, it'll be very conservative and devastatingly low occupancies. And I think for 2021, again, it'll be a rebuild year. But as I say, each day is better than yesterday. Each month is better than last month. And I think that the years over the next 3 to 4 years, I look at it more as a next decade picture. And I think we're going to have 2020 as a reset year. Understand the industry, get to know, really understand our cost structures, appreciate our guests, build customer. 2021 will see great innovation. Because you'll need innovation, and we didn't have a lot of innovation in boom years. It just doesn't allow you the time to do that. So 2021 will be very innovative. So if you're bright, fast, clever, passionate, enthusiastic, you've got a pretty big role in 21. And then 2022 to 2030 will be very good years of growth. And you'd think the top of the cycle's around 26, 27, but who knows?
Certainly there seems to be a very good opportunity for state tourism officers to really start to showcase their products within each state.
Yeah, no doubt. We've seen all state tourism bodies and Tourism Australia come to us to partner. Now previously we'd had a very deep relationship with Destination New South Wales in dollar for dollar marketing. We've now seen in this recent month all state tourism bodies come to us to do joint venture marketing. They're coordinated, they're strong, they're getting funded by government. What's more important than the state tourism organisations is that the governments of each of the states at a premier level have taken an interest in tourism, and they know, not only an interest, they know it is the #1 economic driver to get them out of their low employment, and they're going to use it accordingly. So I think that's a legacy issue that Rachel, myself and Peter have been fighting for the last decade or couple of decades in Australia. Is do you understand how beautiful tourism is and how important it is to employment? Let me assure you, every government understands that now, and I think that will last us well for the next decade.
And Peter, what's your perspective of employment and hospitality?
It's probably pretty similar to what Simon is saying. One of the things that the last 3 months has given us all a lot of exposure to is webinars and opinion, and the recovery. I've heard recovery from 6 months to 6 years. So where it is you don't know. But in the short term, the recovery has to come domestically. That's the reality, and obviously we've got to get some challenges with borders being open domestically, flights running, business confidence back where corporate travel happens again, and that's really important. But the reality is that we're not going to go back to what we closed down at. So hotels that were running at the 80s and 90s when the doors shut are not going to come back. And while we've had JobKeeper very much holding and engaging our staff during this very difficult period, and it's really good that both the hotel associations are putting policies together now to try and lobby government to extend that for our industry, because I think it's something that we really seriously need to have to happen. But if it doesn't happen, then come October, we are at sort of the precipice of where to from here, and the reality is hotels will be running at that stage probably 30 or 40% occupancies, and you don't need the staff of an 80% hotel for a 30 to 40% hotel. So that's the reality. And while some of the positions that we've had on books have probably now gone because of working holiday visas and people going back to their own countries, there has been some natural reduction of your staffing levels. But it's about rebuilding our teams now and re-engaging our teams and being able to come back as quickly as we possibly can. And a lot of it's depending on what governments allow us to do as well.
And Rachel, while we're talking about employment, obviously that probably means something slightly different to aged care, because you've had no shortage of work over the past few months. But certainly aged care has had to deal with some very restrictive working conditions and negative publicity. What are some of your support strategies for your team over the next few months and beyond?
So it's interesting because by restricted conditions, you're obviously talking about the restricted visitation access that happened through the early part of the pandemic. And it was a very interesting time to go through. Obviously, there was ramped up communication with families. So I think I mentioned to you, we were communicating in the care home that had the outbreak every 1 to 3 days. But across all our other 77 care homes, we were communicating every 3 days with families, and had agreed with others a pattern of communication that worked for them. So we had very close communication happening. The support for restricted visitor access was probably at around 90% through the early phase of COVID. And so for those first several weeks, it was more families campaigning to make sure that there was restricted access, and far fewer people wanting to come through. Obviously, all the way through, we allowed visitation for end of life, you know, if people wanted to, and were coming in to say goodbye to loved ones. And then as things, that almost became the new normal. And as things eased, and when I say easing, it was more the anxiety, protocols in place, controls out in the community, people knowing that when people were coming in internationally, they were going into hotel quarantine, so there wasn't the fear of people coming back from holidays and coming to visit people in aged care, etc. The sector collaborated. It's a sector that works really closely together. We collaborated with government and put together the Visitor Access Code, which we signed up to, and that has been working very well ever since. So at Opal we have a 2+2+2, so 2 visitors at a time, twice a day for 2 hours at a time is where we are. And then gradually through the surveys we were doing, we looked at what was important to people and added other things back in. So I'm a woman, I absolutely relate to one of the things that was very important to our residents, and that was hairdressing, and it was one of the first things that came back after visitation. And at many of our homes we have piloted wellness centres, which are reablement centres, all about allied health and physio and action, and in that respect that had paused during that time. That was a very important thing for our team to bring back in, and so we've brought that back in, but only for residents. Some of those centres are also open to the outside. We've not opened them for the outside. So I think our team feel that I hope they feel that they have had a lot of support through this time. We certainly do things together, talk together, work things through together. And while there was some disparity amongst families, and remember that at Opal we are 9,000 people in terms of our team, looking after nearly 7,000 people and their families. So you'll never get 100% consensus, but in most cases we were able to work it through, and I think our team felt supported through it.
Fantastic. And for our online audience, you're listening to Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School's Leadership Speaker Series. If you've joined us on Facebook or YouTube and you would like to ask the panel a question, please place your question in the comments box, and we will be monitoring those questions, and certainly very shortly have the opportunity to ask the panel some of those questions. I'd now like to ask the panel, since the easing of restrictions and more organisations reopening, we have seen a myriad of staff, guest, customer interactions, some good, some not so good. As our respective organisations rely heavily on professional quality and genuine guest-customer interactions, how important will this be for post-COVID-19 recovery? And Peter, if we could start with you, please.
Yeah, no, absolutely critically important. You're absolutely right, Simon. I was in a shopping centre the other day, and it was really interesting to see the international brand shops and how they were enforcing government regulations in their shops, and the shops that weren't branded but were locally owned or run, just it was open slather. And the message that came through loud and clear is the responsibility on us as management companies to make sure that we are providing that environment that is what the government is regulating and what the guest expectation is. And you know, social media is a pretty powerful tool, and you can imagine if an international brand is not living up to the standards and expectations that the government has put in place, it'll pretty quickly be found out. So we have a big responsibility, and it's really important that we don't lose the customer service side of our business under the guise of regulations. And that's the management skill we're going to need to have in place now, is not to sort of let people hide behind this is a regulation, rather, and therefore you can't have that customer service that we used to provide you. So getting the balance right is going to be the challenge, but certainly international branded hotels will continue to make sure that the safety and security of all their guests is paramount.
I certainly think for hotels and aged care, if we think about the services sector, there is a great opportunity for us to actually easily demonstrate best practice for the rest of the sector. Simon, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, two thoughts. I think if you want to build a culture, you know, coming into COVID and having to deal with everything that's been dealt with, if you wanted to build a culture and a set of values to frame yourself and get through it, it's way too late. So you will have had to have had, coming into this, if you're a great company, it would have helped you and cared for you and you know, to Peter and Rachel's comments, you know, you get stronger through this. So that's part one. Secondly, I think our sector has an opportunity to show the beauty of service and genuine care, you know, and that aligns to us. I mean, many times the banking sector, the mining sector and other sectors have taken precedence in our economy. You see today service respected far more than I've ever seen service respected in banking. And we've seen through the Royal Commission, you've seen through many other forms and examples. And service is key. And even pre-COVID, for the 2 years prior, or 2 or 3 years prior, I started to see service come into all industries, but I didn't understand. A lot of industries were sort of playing lip service to it. They didn't really understand it, they just sort of talked about service. And it certainly wasn't from the desk of the CEO, it was a service department. I think in hospitality and tourism and aged care, service is everything. It's not part of our business, it is our business.
Yep.
And I think other sectors are going to value the resources. I think they're going to value the talent in tourism and hospitality and aged care, and they're really going to go for that talent. So I think being within this sector provides opportunities in the wider community, and this is going to be some pretty golden years in terms of our leadership in the wider economy.
Some great points, Simon. And Rachel, aged care and service delivery.
So can I just say to Simon's last point that I completely agree with you, and we'll take all the talent in hospitality, thank you. We are growing fast. We live in a wonderful country, but one which has an ageing population, and aged care is growing. And customer centricity is critical in all sectors. It couldn't be more critical when we're looking after people and caring for people. And that's what all sectors are doing, but in aged care, it's really, really important. And person-centred care is what it's all about. And so, to me, it is absolutely everything. I think that excellence is about taking whatever is good and making it better. So we have to keep doing that. And so that's about systems, that's about things like your customer experience system. It's about taking data and taking knowledge, but ultimately that knowledge is applied to people, and it's understanding the people in your care better so that you can deliver better care to those people. And it's about getting the best and brightest. It's about always making sure that we are getting people who actually care. In fact, we're working with Laureate on an empathy tool so that we can really test for empathy in those that we bring in. So to me, it's the heart of every business, and it couldn't be more critical.
And Rachel, it'd be very remiss of me if I didn't say that Torrens University Australia has a wonderful health school with some fantastic students. So if you ever need some health students, do give us a call. They're ready to go.
Curry sits on our Opal advisory panel. along with many other wonderful people. And we actually work with your design school, journalism, your hospitality students, your wonderful nursing students. We have a grad nurse program that we introduced 2 years ago, and that is fantastic. In fact, early this year, for our grad nurse program, which was designed originally to take 25, last year we took 35, and this year we got nearly 800 applications.
Goodness.
So we have over 50 in it this year.
And you know, one thing that is really important to us across the university is that our students leave us with transferable skills. So hospitality students can work in aged care.
We have many general
Healthcare
managers,
students can
many
work in
lifestyle
hospitality.
managers, many admin managers, many people from hospitality working in aged care, yes.
Now, related to the last question, is there specific knowledge, skills or behaviours that the COVID-19 period has highlighted that you believe educators such as Torrens University Australia now need to focus on with their students? And Simon, we'll start with you.
I think there'll be a variety of technical skills that come out of it. There always are, whether it's revised forms of revenue management, whether it's a different level of distribution dealing with the intermediaries, whether it's cleaning and health, whether it's design, there'll be adaptations there. I think when it comes to leadership, I think leadership is going to change quite substantially. And it has done over the previous years, but I think, you know, instead of sort of having one great leader and then everyone follow, I think there's much more collaboration. You need a lot better thought, and so the ability to lead in a collaborative manner, the ability to be transparent, the ability to be inquisitive, the ability to turn that thought into an action plan or a strategy that is effective quickly. You know, you don't have 3 years to put in strategic plans. You have about 3 days, as Rachel alluded to, and that's if you're lazy. You know, the ability to really see what matters, and you can't do that on your own as one leader. And so I think there'll be some really different leadership skills come out of it, which will play to that. So I think that'll be the key change.
Interestingly, last year we launched an MBA in International Hotel Leadership.
Yeah.
And industry, when they advised on what should be the subject offering, one thing that came through loud and clear from industry, and this was before COVID-19, was the importance for any leader to understand crisis management.
Correct.
Yep.
Would you agree that, especially at this time, that is such an important skill, and probably more so knowledge and skill to be able to lead through, you know,
well, I think
crisis period?
that was born out of the last decade. You know, clearly, you know, history. The last decade has been quite tumultuous, and you suspect that's going to continue in our future in the world. So, yeah, the, crisis management is one way to look at it. Change management's another. And I think crisis management's like doing an MBA. You know, you really find out what you're not good at. You find out what you are good at. You strip what you're not. You know, strip the crap, and you become very effective. So I find them very good times for organisations to really step up.
And Rachel, knowledge, skills and behaviours, what should we be focusing on?
So what I would add to what's already been said, because I think that agility, leadership, crisis management, absolutely key, but I would also add resilience, and I would add understanding of mental health issues, understanding how to identify anxiety in yourself and in others, how to manage that, and how to escalate it appropriately if needed. So I think I'd add mental health and resilience.
Okay. And Peter?
No, look, I have got nothing to add to what Simon and Rachel have said. That's exactly what we need to do. Mental health is very much an issue today that we need to be able to manage and identify, and I think we have to train people to be able to do that, because if you don't see it around your business, it can be very detrimental to the outcome of your performance.
Okay, so one final question before we go to a few of our student questions. Today we have many domestic and international Blue Mountains students, and more broadly Torrens University students listening, who are very concerned about future employment, and particularly our international students. Most want reassurance they should continue their careers in hospitality or healthcare. What advice can you give them? And let's start with Rachel.
Well, my advice would be go to the Opal Aged Care website and have a look at the career pathways. And if you are passionate about people, passionate about challenging and rewarding situations, there is no better sector to come, and it's growing. So you can have really meaningful, really rewarding careers, and we are always looking for good people. We have 33 new homes building in our pipeline, 6 of them opening this year, the next one on the 13th of July, then August, and then continuing through the year. We are always looking for good people. There is nowhere better to work.
And Simon?
Yeah, look, I think if you go online and you look for evidence, you'll find that aged care and hospitality are growing. You know, regardless, this is a reset. But nowhere will you find that those industries will not grow. Nowhere will you find that they'll be reshaped or digitised out of, you know, current structures. They're not. Their business is based on people, and thank God they are. They're facilitated and supported by technology and other sort of economic factors. But ultimately, they're based on people, and they will always be. So first and foremost, it needs talent, and secondly, it's a growth industry. You'll see evidence of that as at today. Forget pre-COVID, but it's the way in which every government around the world will use tourism to stimulate economic growth. Like, if you spent 2 months, the next 2 months, and you have any doubt, go on, you know, international websites and country websites. Look at Australia. There's interest, and there are industries that won't come out of this. There are industries that will be smacked around a little bit, but not tourism, and certainly not aged care as well. And again, back to the service element, I think they've elevated their status through this. I think they've been elevated in respect through this. So, you know, it's illogical to think that they wouldn't be strong coming out.
And Peter, advice to our students about their future careers?
I would say to the students, this is a golden opportunity that's presented right now. I said there's no greater challenge than being part of rebuilding an industry, and what they will learn over the next 2 or 3 years will stay with them for the rest of their careers. And in my mind, this is a fast track to these people being our industry leaders of the future, because they'll reflect on what happened in the next 2 or 3 years, always through their career. And this will be the cornerstone of some great careers. In the short term, don't think short term, because if you're all worried about next week, that's not the answer. Take any opportunity that's presented to you in the short term, because once you get through that and you get past the period of time that we have to rebuild, you're set. Your career is absolutely set to go forward.
That term you use, industry leaders of the future, I think that just has such resonance, and it is so meaningful for our audience listening today. But before we finish, I do want to give our students the opportunity to ask you some questions. So I've actually been monitoring questions. They're texting me directly, so I can see the questions coming in. And so what I'll do, I'll ask some of these questions, and perhaps if we could have one response, and anybody can respond, whoever would like to respond. But if anybody else wants to add to the response, please feel free to do so. So the first question from one of our students today: how do hospitality employees prioritise professional services to guests while being contactless in becoming the first priority due to COVID-19? How do we behave in this matter in the new normal?
I think communicate. You know, don't sort of let a procedure get in the way of a great relationship. The procedures are there to support, but communicate. Ask the guests how they feel. Ask them how they think. You know, you can only establish a relationship with someone when you get them talking and communicating with you. So, similar to the check-in system of pre-COVID, if you just simply, you know, someone came up and asked to check in and you gave them a key, you haven't formed a relationship, and therefore that would have been as bland as the COVID relationship we have today with some of the cleaning procedures in place. So, talk, communicate, engage, educate, still relevant.
Okay, would anybody else like to add to that?
No.
I think that's spot on.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another question from Phil, who's one of our Flight Centre students who are studying a tourism program with Flight Centre. obviously there's quite a few Flight Centre students who are very concerned given what's happened in that particular industry where work has pretty much dried up. They haven't been employed for the last 6 months or so. They're very worried about whether they're going to be able to return to work in the near future, and will there be a lot of competition for jobs, even despite the fact that they will be a graduate and have a qualification. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good question again, Bill. A tough one, really. But cream comes to the surface all the time. You've got to back yourself a little bit. You've got to say, my skills are going to get me to where I need to go, because you can't worry about everybody else. You've got to worry about yourself. And so how do you say, how do I go about making a career or an opportunity for myself? And if you take that approach and you believe that you've got the skills and the ability, you'll be able to find the right opportunity for yourself.
And Simon, I think you mentioned earlier transferable skills. Think about what skills you have that are transferable. Everything that you have been taught is about dealing with people, about relationships, which we've spoken about all through this as the underpinning of everything in pretty much any sector that you can think of. So look at your transferable skills, look at how they can apply, and I think, back to what you said, back yourself. Go have the discussion, look at what the job description says, and see how your skills translate through, and then be able to argue that, be able to show how that works. Give it a go.
Okay. I have another question from Ralph, who's one of our lecturers, and his comment on one of the points that you haven't really touched on as yet is occupancy over the coming months. So what are your thoughts around occupancy and growth for your properties, and this is probably more so for Simon and Peter, over the next few months? And sorry, he added on, are you seeing the growth that was initially expected?
I'm not sure what was expected, but they're little green shoots is all I could say. It's a rebuild, and until we get all our borders open, until we get our flights going, it's very hard for us to all just anticipate growth on growth, and it's going to take time. In my opinion, we've got support structures with some hotels being able to deal with quarantine guests, which is helping occupancies to a certain degree, but that's not the real business at the end of the day, and it's going to take time. There's no real answer to this, and one of the things I guess I'm worried about more than anything is trying to put a business plan together for 2021. Based on where we sit right now, it's just it's Nostradamus stuff. It's all a bit of a guesswork. Yeah.
I think the only thing I'd add is don't think about occupancy as one whole thought. Occupancy is built off, for hotels, it's built off 6 or 7 key market segments. You have leisure, domestic leisure, you've got international leisure, you've got conferencing, you've got corporate, you've got government, you've got sport, you've got cultural events. So, don't get disillusioned by an occupancy figure that you're hearing that's going to be 20% or 30% and then building to 50%. Understand why, and you'll have a little bit more confidence behind that figure. So, domestic leisure, why is it opening? Because the borders are open. Conferencing, why is it not going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months? It's not because it's bad or gone, it's because there's mass gathering issues and then there's a long lead time. That's okay, it will be back. If you look at corporates, they haven't even worked out whether they're going back into their offices, let alone whether they're travelling yet. So understand that, and it's really important to understand that, because otherwise you talk a big occupancy figure as a whole, and I'm right on this at the moment because I'm helping educate government, you get despondent. But just understand the logic. The same strength of industry applies in all those market segments, and you can understand why the drivers are between each of those, and they will rebuild. They'll all come in and they'll layer in over the next 18 months at a different point in time. They will all come together in 2022, and they'll stick and they'll grow, and there'll be other market segments that contribute, and they'll build. So it's a great point in time because we're at the start of the next cycle.
It's interesting. I'll come back to you in just a second, Rachel. Our Lura campus, we also operate a hotel that's open to the public that our students run. over the last couple of weeks, we've started to see good spikes in weekend occupancy, and certainly talking to other hoteliers in the Blue Mountains, they're also seeing similar spikes over weekends, where more and more people are starting to get out of Sydney and start to travel into regional areas for that short weekend stay, which is surely a positive thing.
Yeah, well, it's simple. It's a simple logic. It's the first sector that had barriers removed. So go through each sector, work out when the barriers are removed, work out the lead time. They layer all back in, and it's a strong story.
Exactly. And Rachel?
I was just going to say, with my past hotelier's hat on, that I think it's about one of the points that Simon made right at the beginning. I think people have been cooped up for a long time. They can't wait to get out. They can't go international. They're going to go domestically. It's a wonderful opportunity for them to explore Australia. And like all occupancy, it's about the experience. So it's about selling what the experience is when they're coming. It's about the lived experience when they're there. And then I travelled last week to Victoria. Our teams have been travelling all the way through, all across the country, because obviously aged care continues. But our executive and home office teams are travelling more and more now, and we need to. We have to get out. You know, at the end of the day, we're there to support the care homes, and we're doing that. And I actually think that while physical distancing obviously presents certain challenges for conferencing, I mean, if we could solve that, I would start conferencing tomorrow. But I think things will come back quicker than we think. I really do think, you know, things will come back. They fell off a cliff quickly. They're going to come back quickly, certainly from a domestic travel, because while technology has been fantastic, and I think it will change certain things forever, and there are certain calls that you can do now on Zoom or Team that you'll keep doing on Zoom and Team, but face-to-face, it's just a different, it's a different kind of communication, and what you can do in, you know, half an hour on a Zoom call, you can do in 5 minutes. Face-to-face. So I do think that the domestic will come back quickly.
Now I have one final question for Simon and Peter, and this is from Vaishnovi. With regards to hiring, will hotels focus on rehiring existing staff, or will new graduates and budding talent be also given opportunities in the recruitment process?
A really good question. I think the reality is that we'll look to our current workforce and try and care for them. They've been loyal to us. They've served us well. In saying that, I don't think it will take us long to re-establish that workforce, yeah, that's not at the expense of great talent. So, you know, I think the students here particularly come from a rich stream of quality, of ability, and there'll be new roles and new leadership roles, and there will be people that will leave the industry. Quite significant people that will leave the industry. It'll be a different industry and they'll move on, and many have already moved on to other roles in retail and so on and so forth. So I think the short answer is yes, we'll care for getting our team members back, as you would hope and expect us to, but it won't be long before we're looking for external talent as well, and that will be within this year, I would have thought.
And that's very reassuring. Peter?
Yeah, I'd have to just echo Simon's comments. It's really what it's about. It's your initial teams, re-engaging them because they've been loyal to you, and making sure that they've given the first opportunities to build your business with you, but at the same time looking for that talent to bring in, because there are people that have left the industry and those opportunities are going to be there. And as I said earlier, you know, don't just short-term take any opportunity, be part of the rebuild, because wherever you work, you'll learn so much because it's just so new what we're doing.
Rachel, Simon, Peter, I can't thank you enough for your time this morning, and we really appreciate how busy you all are, but taking your time out to come and, you know, share your thoughts with our students. It's been a wonderful morning, and again, on behalf of all of us here, thank you very much. And to everyone who's joined us online, we also thank you. You've been listening to Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School Leadership Speaker Series, and we look forward to coming back to you and talking to another hotel leader, or perhaps leaders, next term. Thank you.